Alright everybody, this is going to be a little bit of a different video. I figured I'd do a little bit of a reaction slash highlights of the 4.6 preview stream that we just got from Salty and Mr. Ozball over there. So this patch is actually going to be pretty darn impactful as far as how the game is played. The good news is that pretty much the game as you know it is not changing. What's really changing is your ability to do Explore mode in a more meaningful way, as well as giving your troops a little extra pep as a permanent bonus. So they finally gave us a sense of what these diamonds are all about. So what these diamonds are is an ability to place global benefits to all of your troops. So very similar to how each of the kingdoms can get you like one bonus stat for all of your troops. These things up here are going to house little benefits that you can give to all of your troops that you plug in there. And again, I'm going to be a little vague because I don't want to get in trouble for saying too much. I'll link to the stream, so if you want to see all of the details, you can actually just watch the stream and jump around if you want. However, what's worth noting there is that what these diamonds are for is for actually putting in global benefits for all of your troops. And from what we saw, it's going to be things like stat bonuses, little benefits, things like that. So the way that you actually get those things is by jumping in there and doing these explores. When you're doing these explores, you're going to get an option to be doing different kinds of things. So when you're exploring, there's going to be ramping difficulties within this, and then as you run through the explores, you'll be able to do boss fights and mini boss fights, and the rewards you get out of these things are going to be these tokens, badges, and medals. So what you're actually plugging into these top diamond slots is going to be these tokens, badges, or medals. Not the tokens, but just the badges or the medals, I should say. So you're running through Explorer, you're getting these tokens, which can be upgraded into badges, which can be upgraded into medals, and the badges and medals can be plugged into these global slots, and those will give you some benefits. Obviously, badges will give you less of a benefit, medals will give you more of a benefit. So now for early game players, these will actually have some pretty dramatic effects, because 8 stats, for instance, for somebody in the early game is pretty substantial, whereas for an endgame player, 8 stats isn't necessarily going to make or break something, but it will have some level of impact, of course. So early game players have something to go grinding for, endgame players have something to try and optimize. So I think overall that's actually really, really nice. So global benefits there, definitely super cool. But the other thing that's really going to make endgame players wet their pants here is this little bad boy here. So now you're able to actually upgrade troops with these medals. So as I mentioned, tokens will upgrade into badges, will upgrade into medals. You can now apply these medals to your troops directly. So what that actually means is that you're going to be able to take a troop that you love and give them just a slight boost in some stats. So from what at least we saw in the preview video, it's not going to be like, you know, your Infernus went from hitting for 30 damage and now he's magically hitting for like 80 damage. It's nothing crazy like that. However, it's kind of yet just another way of enhancing your troops. So thematically, if you think about where this game is now going, this patch just before this introduced new kingdom levels, which had more stat bonuses in there, had more kingdom team faction bonuses. So if you're now using like a pure kingdom team on a kingdom that's leveled up, with medals attached to all of those troops, with global medals also applied, the amount of stats you're going to have are going to look dramatically different than somebody that doesn't have all of those things. So now there's actually a lot of optimization and min-maxing that you're going to be able to do with your troops. The way that it applies these stats really isn't anything that you can pick and choose, so even though the medals all do different things, once you apply them to a troop, they're just giving you raw stats. And what those stats are going to be based on is the troop roles. So if you remember, each of the troops now have a designated role, like some of them are a warrior, some of them are like an assassin, that kind of stuff. So every assassin's going to get the same kind of stats, every like defender's going to get the same kind of stats. So this is again more of like a min-maxing thing. So a troop with all of these medals applied is going to be slightly better than troops without them. So overall, again, this is actually going to be a really nice way for players to optimize their lineups, really get some stuff to grind for. So I think Explore mode is actually now going to be really, really fun. I mean, even as you can see from this screen, like, there's a lot of progression you can make in here. It's showing you that at least they're planning potentially up to 12 difficulty levels. I think we saw in the video that, like, those fights are basically going to look like mid to high level delve style fights as far as difficulty is concerned. So, you know, if you're thinking about what kind of teams you'd potentially want to run to be able to beat something like that, you would have to think, like, how would you optimize for, like, a high level event kind of a team. But again, like, you're still going to be able to go into this mode, and you could just choose to do this at the easiest difficulty if you want to just be farming trait stones like you always have before in the past. However, endgame players will have a way of potentially getting some more benefit if they can take this higher up. So I think this really kind of gives everybody something to do. The early game players are really going to have something that could potentially give them a lot more benefit with these global medals. For endgame players, something to really grind for, which is kind of crazy. And then, of course, you'll be able to see what's going on here. So any troop that has medals attached to them, they're going to have this special border. So it looks like there's going to be like a bronze, a silver, and a gold border that's going to be applied here. So when you're fighting another team, you'll have a sense of, like, they have all of their troops medaled up or they have none of their troops medaled up. You can kind of see that. There's also a way that you could see the global things that are in there. So you'll be able to tell what the other team's running as you, like, go through these fights. But I think overall, this is really going to change up how people are going to spend their day-to-day within the game. So, like, historically, you'd be doing PvP fights for getting all of your gold. Now, in this kind of a scenario, there's actually a lot of opportunities to get your resources out of doing these. And the other benefit, of course, is going to be all of these badges, tokens, medals that you're going to be getting as a result as well. So I'm really curious to see how players end up balancing their time when it comes to the game. I imagine initially endgame players are going to just be diving in to explore and going crazy. I suspect for early game players, you guys probably aren't going to really want to invest like too much into this system. It'll be fun to mess around with, but like in the early game, like your main goal should still be trying to get troops. And trying to get troops to me in the early game involves basically doing PvP fights as well, because PvP is going to get you your gold, and it's also going to get you glory, and glory you can turn into troops. So there's really nothing you're going to be doing in the Explorer mode today, once this patch comes out, I should say, which is not anytime soon as far as we heard, like at least not this week. But doing the Explorer mode is not going to get you any new troops. So for early game players, I really don't think Explorer is something that you want to invest a ton of time into. Certainly check it out and do it for your arcane trait stones as you normally would. But for early game players, again, like PvP to me is still going to be the best place to go, because you'll be able to get your glory and your gold, turn the glory into troops, use the gold to level up your kingdoms. You're still trying to get to that base state. Explorer is just kind of like a more interesting mode now. For endgame players, I think there is going to be a choice now. So I think endgame players are really going to have to balance between, do they want to be doing PvP for their fights to potentially get glory? Do they want to be doing explorers so they can potentially build up their token badge medal pool? It's going to be a very interesting patch, but no questions asked. Like, it's going to be a pretty dramatic change for endgame players, if nothing else. Again, fights in the future are going to have stats that look dramatically different than the stats we see today, or even like a couple months ago before 4.5 even came out. So between all the kingdom bonuses you can get, between all the kingdom stat bonuses you can get from the power levels and the kingdom levels, between all of these medals that you can now apply to the troops directly, or the global medals you could be applying, stats are going to look a little crazy. So someone that's like super endgame is going to look very different than somebody that is just kind of, you know, close to the end game, let's put it that way. So I can only imagine what team scores are going to look like in the future. Like around 14,000 plus is kind of what people generally sit at right now in the end game. I can only imagine after all of this stuff is applied, people might be looking at team scores in the 15,000, potentially 16,000 range, something like that. So again, a pretty big power gap there. So overall, I think this is going to be a really exciting patch. I look really forward to this coming out and giving you guys a really detailed view as far as how the mode works, how to optimize for it, what teams are the best to try and run through this, how the mode overall works, and of course my impressions of it once we get there. But I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a heads up. I hope to God that this stream does not piss off any of the developers if you guys are watching. I tried to be as vague as possible while still being informative. And of course, everything I said in here is subject to change, so You know, of course, if 4.6 comes out, none of this is in there. That's potentially possible, although I suspect this is all in there. But like I said, I will link to the stream in the description below, so if you feel like watching through and seeing everything that took place, by all means, make sure you jump in there and check it out. But I think everybody's going to have a little something to look forward to. I don't think this really hurt anybody. There's no weird monetization mechanics added into this. There's no weird, like, extra nonsense that you're going to have to worry about. It's just a new mode that you can take advantage of without hurting any of your existing gameplay. The only thing that's potentially changed here is that if you were somebody that was soul farming by adjusting the difficulty up on your fights, so for instance, if you used to be farming Explore mode on Warlord 4, which would give you like a 200% soul bonus, that is not going to be made available to you anymore. So we'll have to see when the patch actually comes out how effectively you can actually soul grind in this mode. But certainly you can just do your normal soul grinding team inside one of these Explorer modes. Just the amount of bonus souls you're going to get looks like it would potentially be less if you were previously doing it on Warlord 4. It doesn't look like that's going to be an option in this patch. So definitely something to look forward to there. But yeah, that's my overall feelings, my impressions, a general sense of what's going on. I look forward to letting you guys know about all of this when it comes out. But this is Keylime, signing off. See you guys later. Mwah.